Hey, good morning. Patricia Murphy here. It's Saturday. This is Seattle Now. Today we're bringing you the best from the KUOW Newsroom. First, after a recent surge of gun violence, North Seattle residents along Aurora Avenue are on edge. The neighborhood has been a long-time hotspot for human trafficking. Neighborhood efforts to install barricades got the attention of city officials who say they're working urgently to close the streets and assign police patrols. Amy Radel explains. And heads up, this story contains mentions of sexual assault and human trafficking.
In May, a series of rolling gun battles broke out on Aurora, allegedly between rival human traffickers. Resident Jake Wallach said a bullet struck his house just outside his infant's bedroom. Soon after, residents blocked 3 side streets with homemade barriers, but the city cleared them, and then the shooting started again. At a community meeting Wednesday night, an incensed Wallach addressed city officials.
What do you guys have to say about that? Like, you literally opened the road.
Many people were dismayed that Mayor Katie Wilson and City Attorney Erica Evans didn't attend the community meeting, but the mayor's representative, Allison Holcomb, said she heard exhaustion and resolve in the voices of residents.
We're here for the long haul. I think we need to sprint on a few things right now, and we all need to realize this is going to be a marathon.
Holcomb said the city will likely close access to some streets off Aurora, but she said they need a little more time to deliberate. Residents are trying to keep up the pressure. One of them, Peter Orr, says a march called Stop the Traffickers, Stop the Bullets is planned for this Saturday evening.
So we're for peace in our neighborhood and for justice for victims of the sex trade. That's what I'm marching for.
Residents want to know what police and prosecutors are doing to stem the violence related to human trafficking. Prosecutors said these cases are complicated and hard to prove, and there's a vigorous debate about the effectiveness of court orders to keep sex buyers out of the neighborhood. Former City Attorney Ann Davison helped implement these so-called SOAP orders, or stay out of area of prostitution. She was in the audience at Wednesday's meeting. Davison says she never charged anyone with violating a SOAP order, and she takes that as a sign they were working.
I think people were staying away. I think the neighborhood saw a reduction in the amount of buyers that were circling, and then as soon as you diminish that, you're going to start to diminish the other parts.
But the new city attorney, Erica Evans, who replaced Davison, campaigned against SOAP orders, saying they aren't effective. She also said her office has not charged anyone this year with buying sex. She says those investigations rely on undercover operations that police are too understaffed to do.
It's extremely, extremely resource intensive on officers that are already limited right now, and not something that's been recently done.
Evans says she's taking routes that don't rely on hard-to-obtain criminal convictions. That could include trying to close nuisance properties on Aurora. She's also seeking funding for a prosecutor to file extreme risk protection orders against sex traffickers to take away their firearms. Meanwhile, across town, Mayor Wilson spoke at a Seattle City Club event on Wednesday night and said she's working to get more police presence to people worried about their safety along Aurora.
We also have emphasis patrols that SPD is doing right now, the greater presence. We're stepping up the gun violence reduction unit in the area. And these are the immediate fixes, right? Like, no illusion that things like this are solving the longer term problem.
Mayor Wilson called the recent gun violence there unacceptable. Then there's the plight of the women and girls being trafficked in the neighborhood. Alex Voorhees is a senior deputy with the King County Prosecutor's Office. Her latest case involves a Bellevue man accused of trafficking a 14-year-old girl on Aurora. Voorhees says the recent gun violence is related to territorial disputes by people engaged in this lucrative human trafficking.
So what we see and hear in the work that we do, in the investigations that we work with detectives on, is a money-making machine.
Voorhees says many traffickers are also linked to gang activity and drug dealing, and they force the women selling sex on Aurora to meet brutal quotas.
I've seen text messages between pimps and girls that they have working for them where the girl is saying, I was just raped and I'm bleeding, and they're told to clean themselves up and get back out there.
Voorhees says it's very difficult to convict human traffickers because it requires the survivors of this abuse to testify against them. She wants Washington State to focus more on going after sex buyers, who she says currently face lower penalties than for stealing a candy bar from a convenience store. Her office has lobbied in Olympia to make sex buying a Class C felony, and she says those efforts will continue. Amy Radel, KUOW News.
Next, the latest from the paper mill disaster in Longview. Earlier this week, the names were released of the 11 people who died. The scope of the tragedy has sparked concerns about the lasting impact on this southwest Washington town. OPB's Eric Newman reports.
A line of visitors snakes around the parking lot of Bob's Sporting Goods in downtown Longview. They're here for a barbecue fundraiser for the families of the employees who died in the chemical spill at the Nippon Dynawave Packaging Company. Rose Scattergood helped organize it. She and her husband run Big Smoke Barbecue, a nonprofit in the nearby town of Kalama. Scattergood says Longview was raised on the paper mills.
This is what feeds our families. This is what puts our kids through college. So it's been like that for decades. So it just is hard to swallow when a big tragedy like this happens.
On the morning of May 26th, a large tank at the Nippon facility ruptured that contained hundreds of thousands of gallons of caustic chemicals that are used in the paper-making process. It took emergency responders days to recover the bodies of the employees who died. 11 people died total, several others were injured. Officials say the incident was especially deadly because it happened when crews were changing shifts, so there were more people in the area than usual. For Scattergood, the whole thing has created existential worries about the Longview-Kelso community.
It kind of makes people wonder what's going to come of this and what does our future look like for Longview and in the paper industry and the mills.
The Nippon paper mill is a major employer in the area. Most people here are connected by 1 or 2 degrees of separation from someone affected by the chemical spill. Frank Masna lives in La Center. He trucked in the 23-foot smoker he uses in his catering business for the fundraiser. His godson works at the paper mill.
You know, the first thing I found out is like, was Colt working today? And like, yeah. Is he involved? He's like, he's the other side of the mill when it happens. Like, thank God. You know, and you know, I feel bad for saying that, but it's like, I don't want him to get hurt. I don't want anybody to get hurt.
Before catering, Masna retired from a career with the Vancouver Fire Department.
This will be one of those events they'll talk about for 50 years. This is a big deal.
Joel Fenter is also at the barbecue. He lives in Kelso and works at the Weyerhaeuser facility that's right next to the Nippon paper mill.
It's been pretty rough. I lost a former co-worker, and he was one of the ones that died. I had 2 friends that are injured pretty bad. They were in the shop and tried to help pull people out.
He says one of his sons used to work at the paper mill. Each morning, he would park right next to where the chemical tank ruptured. When one of these wood products companies shuts down, it creates a ripple effect on the nearby businesses, Fenter says.
With Nippon down, they provide steam to Norpac, the paper mill next door. Without that steam, Norpac has all but one of their paper machines shut down now. I work at Weyerhaeuser, and 100% of the chips from the logs we saw go to Nippon.
The sawmills and paper mills are all part of this ecosystem, says Terry Carlson. He's the president of the Cowlitz-Wahkiakum Central Labor Council. The organization supports local trade unions and also has been collecting money for the families of the victims.
Every paper mill in this town is a huge asset to the town.
Carlson says the Nippon paper mill provides good family wage union jobs in Longview. Now the community is faced with the double-edged sword of wanting accountability for the incident while hoping they don't lose one of the town's main employers.
Mills are shutting down left and right, so I mean that's the last thing we want is this tragedy to lead to a mill shutdown.
The investigation into why the chemical tank ruptured was initially delayed while emergency responders recovered the deceased victims from the hazardous site. This barbecue fundraiser was planned in just a few days. Normally, Rose Scattergood, the organizer, puts on events like cooking competitions. As soon as she put out the call about the fundraiser, people rushed in to help.
This is where we live, and everybody knows somebody who's been affected, and this is the best way we knew to help out.
The smell of hamburgers and kettle corn is still in the air after a few hours, and the line of new people waiting to get in stretches around the block. I'm Eric Newman, reporting.
Next, students and families in Bothell have been pushing back against a decision to not renew the contract of a popular school resource officer. Bothell is just the latest community to grapple with the questions over the role of SROs in schools. Noelle Gasca has that story.
In May, hundreds of Bothell High School students got up, walked out of class and marched to City Hall. They were there in support of Officer Garrett Ware, a popular school resource officer who's worked at Bothell High School since 2017. Students say Ware does more than just monitor the school's campus. He makes an effort to connect with people. He checks in with kids who are sitting alone or wandering the hallways at lunch. He goes to school concerts and sporting events. But in May, the North Shore School District School Board voted to not renew its contract with the Bothell Police Department. Bothell High is in the North Shore District.
I'm not able to support the renewal of this contract because this district owes our community something more comprehensive, more equitable, and more empowering to all community members.
That's Board Director Han Tran, speaking before she cast her no vote. A school resource officer, or SRO, is a police officer trained in school-based law enforcement and crisis response. In Washington, they can make arrests and are supposed to keep an eye on gangs and drugs within schools while also building positive relationships with students. But many districts have ended or restructured their SRO programs since 2020, after George Floyd's murder generated protests against police brutality towards Black and brown Americans. Critics of SRO programs argue that the presence of police in schools actually increases the chance of Black and brown students ending up behind bars. Instead, they say, schools should invest in counselors and mental health professionals. Some Bothell High students see it differently.
They're not representing their community. They're not being the bridge builders that they should be between both sides.
That's Brianna Pan, a senior at Bothell High. Pan says she feels like board members chose their own political agendas over the experiences of Bothell High students when they decided to not renew Officer Ware's contract. In 2024, a survey conducted by the North Shore School District found that almost 79% of student respondents agreed or strongly agreed that the SRO program promoted student safety.
As my perspective as being Asian American, I've never felt racially disadvantaged having a SRO officer on campus.
North Shore School Board members declined to comment when KUOW reached out. Claudine Miller has 2 sons attending Bothell High. She also volunteers at the school. She believes the board's decision around what to do with Bothell's SRO program can't be rooted in what other districts are doing.
We are not all the high schools in the region. Like, we are an individual high school that has a program that has worked very well for us for years and has been a program that feels like an anomaly in some ways.
She worries the high school will be less safe without Ware next year. Officer Ware declined KUOW's request for an interview, but said in an email he was, quote, incredibly disappointed in the board's decision. His boss, Captain Mike Johnson with the Bothell Police Department, answered KUOW's questions about how the SRO program operates at Bothell High School, but declined to comment on the board's vote to end the program. The department is in a tricky situation, Johnson says, because they don't want to sound like they're lobbying the board or strong-arming them into making policy decisions. Other districts in King County have also ended their contracts with local police departments. Highland Public Schools has not used SRO since 2021. In Seattle, the school district ended its SRO program in 2020. Some want it back in light of community violence around Garfield High School. Some districts still have SROs, like Mercer Island and Federal Way. For now, it appears unlikely that Officer Ware will return to Bothell High School in the fall. But the fight isn't over. Community members have launched a recall campaign against North Shore School Board members who voted to end the SRO program. Noelle Gasca, KUOW News.
And finally, typically when you spot a great blue heron in western Washington, you see one flying or fishing alone. In Redmond, a huge group of herons have picked a place to nest in an unusual spot. Casey Martin has more.
I'm standing in a park close to downtown Redmond. It's a little over 4 acres with lots of tall evergreens. This is Heron Rookery Park, named after the birds it was intended to protect. The city set up this park decades ago for herons to build their nests and help a species that was almost hunted to extinction. But lately, this park, it's pretty quiet. No herons. The birds turned down this custom-built home for a place designed for a completely different animal. Just 2 miles south of the abandoned heron rookery is the Marymore Off-Leash Dog Park. And right in the middle of it, the herons have taken over a cluster of cottonwoods.
They're kind of dinosaur-y like.
Desiree Worster brings her 2 dogs, Naja and Novak, here to jump into the water. She's seen herons fish in the river before, but usually one at a time.
Nothing like this. And they're loud and big and a lot of nests.
The heron nests are hard to miss. You can hear the babies all day, even over the dog barks. People crane their necks to get a peek of the hungry, loud birds. Peter Thomasis from Bellevue and his dog Bellini usually start seeing the babies in April.
Like geeky little herons. I mean, the tiny birds with huge legs and huge wings.
One other park goer has become something of an expert, Michael Hobbs, a lifelong bird lover. He can even do a perfect heron call.
Quack! Quack!
Hobbs has walked these woods for 3 decades and has watched this site since the very first heron nest. His current count?
150 adults, and then they're going to raise 1, 2, 3 young in each nest, so that could be as much as 200 young. So that's a lot of herons.
Heron colonies, he says, can grow to a couple dozen nests.
But to have one more than 50 nests is pretty unusual.
In 2012, Hobbs says the herons started showing up here. Then more and more arrived. People got concerned that all the yapping, barking dogs might disturb the birds trying to raise their babies. So the park put up fencing to protect the birds. It turns out, though,
they're fine. They're 50, 60 feet up in the air. They don't care. They chose this spot, so they weren't afraid.
But there was still a need for the fence, one they didn't quite anticipate. Remember, we're talking over 300 birds in a very small area.
Poop flies out of those nests, and you do not want to have your dog under those nests.
Even on the outside of the fence, there's a strong sewer-like smell. Not something you want your off-leash dog to roll around in. Many people at the park say they're seeing more herons here every summer. State wildlife officials aren't certain, but they think this local population of birds is growing.
We have abundant water, abundant trees, and abundant fish, so they're pretty big fans of Western Washington.
Allison Anholt is a biologist with the State Department of Fish and Wildlife. She calls the great blue heron a conservation success story, a species so common now, it's the official bird of Seattle. As to why the birds seem to love a popular dog park, Anholt says it could be because the park is so busy. It is King County's most visited park.
Maybe humans are actually sort of protecting the herons by preventing other predators from coming too close. It's kind of an interesting situation with suburban heronries.
Michael Hobbs, the longtime birder, says whatever it is, the hundreds of birds are happily feasting on snakes, frogs, and fish close by.
And they're successful here, so that just brings more of them.
The birds will raise their young at the park through July, and then they'll leave until next spring. At Marymore Park, I'm Casey Martin, KUOW News.
Appreciate you listening to Seattle Now, and thanks to our generous financial donors for your support, and thank you for rating and reviewing the show on your favorite podcast app. Our production team includes Caroline Chamberlain Gomez, Vaughn Jones, Andy Hurst, Brooklyn Jamerson Flowers, and Paige Browning. Greg Kramer does our theme music. Seattle Now and KUOW Public Radio are members of the NPR network. I'm Patricia Murphy. See you soon.